Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to Three Peas in a Pod. Ed's got me all flustered because he's laughing.
Well, I just looked over, which I don't normally do, and I noticed I got a black thing on. You got a black thing on. He's got a gray thing on. How do we show up on screen today, Charlie? We're all in black. Is it
So
okay?
that's what you were concerned about.
Well, I wasn't concerned about it. I just
You're over here laughing.
I know. Well,
You're laughing during my intro.
Okay, sometimes I think I'm funny.
Besides Nathan, Jason and Ed, you're wearing the same thing you wore last episode.
No.
You are?
Yeah, we are.
I just pulled it up to confirm.
We are.
What?
We are watching. We're wearing the same thing.
Just so y'all know, this is not. Well, I guess you know that because Nathan ain't the same thing. Nathan apparently has more clothes than we do. I
okay
doubt
with
that's
that.
true.
I'm okay with that.
I doubt that's true.
Well, we'll see. So this is episode 254, as I didn't get to say because Ed interrupted me with his laughter.
I did not. You didn't distracted.
I
by
did
my
get
life.
distracted. That's the truth. So, and people don't know this who are listening today, watching today, but this is take 2 of episode 254.
Mhm.
We tried really hard to do episode 254 like a while back.
Yeah, whatever.
And
it was.
I don't know what Charlie did back there,
Hmm.
but Charlie, he messed it up.
But he
somehow.
knew almost immediately. As soon as we were done, he said, "Uh oh."
Well, you know, quick confession is
Yeah,
appreciated,
he goes,
but
"Uh-oh."
I'd much rather have the episode intact.
Faulty equipment.
It was faulty equipment.
Faulty
Blame
equipment.
it on the equipment.
Yeah,
but
yes.
anyway, we filmed this answer to this question before, and we're going to do it again. And I can tell you for sure, we ain't going to say the same thing.
No, we don't remember.
No.
We do not remember, but
I should have put notes inside this clothing.
I need to pull it right back out because you got it on again.
Exactly.
So we have a question that was sent to us by someone who listened or watched another episode way
Yeah,
back.
they put this in a YouTube comment.
Yeah, on YouTube.
So sometimes when you leave us comments, we actually respond with a full length episode.
That's right.
So if you got better comments,
It needs to be interesting.
if you had an interesting comment, we might actually respond to it in a full length
So
episode.
jump in the comments. Your comment might wind up as an episode,
That's right.
as in this case today. So if you're a super fan, you will remember on a previous episode, we discussed the question, does God want me to stay in a loveless marriage?
Mhm.
It was someone who had written a question to us about that topic in their own life, and we spoke to that issue. Well, this fan of ours, I don't want to call him a super fan.
This bot.
Person, bot, yeah, it could have been anything.
AI generated.
Generated this question for us, and I will tell you before I read it, quite long, but I'm going to give it my full attention. Ed will not. He will space out.
Somewhere in the middle, I will think of something else.
He will, and probably start laughing about it.
Or crying.
Uh-huh. Then he'll be thinking about his other shirt
Yeah, that's
that
right.
he'll wear next time on the
There you go.
podcast. So I'm going to read the question, and this, as I said, remember, this does sort of bounce off of that former topic we talked about, marriage. Okay, here we go. I've been through a lot over the past 3 years, and I'd really appreciate some outside perspectives. My wife has struggled with alcoholism and Adderall addiction, often lying and sneak drinking, despite countless conversations and pleas for her to get help. Thousands of dollars were spent on alcohol and illegally purchased Adderall when she'd run out of her prescription. Even during marriage counseling, she would sneak drink before and after sessions. I begged her to make an effort to change, but nothing improved. Instead, she became hateful and blamed me for ruining the family when I decided to move out and file for divorce. I made this decision because I couldn't tolerate the lies and disrespect any longer, and I felt it was becoming a toxic environment for our 7-year-old son to grow up in. My goal is to teach him that marriage should be built on honesty and respect, and that if those things are absent, you need to have enough self-respect to walk away. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have any of you been through something similar, and how did you handle it? To answer that one, no, I have not been through that specific
No.
situation. And to read your story, can I just say it breaks my heart to hear that you've been through that.
Yeah,
and,
very
For
sorry.
you and your son.
Yes, and everyone involved.
And your wife. to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah,
your
everybody
wife.
involved in that situation. I cannot imagine how difficult that was. So I can't say that what we're going to be talking about for us is something that comes from that specific type of experience. But we do want to honor and give you some of our thoughts because you've asked for them. And so where do you want to start, guys?
Well, I think it's, as you've already kind of hit on, I haven't been in that particular scenario, but I know people who have been in similar scenarios.
sure.
Certainly been married. People have been married to an addict, or been in a serious relationship with someone who was addicted, and so there's wisdom that can be shared there. I'll also say this, because we don't know who you are, and we don't know your life. I don't know if you are a believer or not, so that would change to some degree the answer I would give about your specific scenario in certain aspects, which we can get into later. But I think that's an important part. I mean, you wrote into a church podcast, 3 pastors in a podcast, and I mean, we have to answer when we're dealing with people in our congregation who are going through marital issues or things like that. We have to answer it from a pastoral, a Christian perspective. But the Christian view of marriage is different than a secular view of marriage, a non-Christian view of marriage. And so I think that's an important part. All of that is to set up what I'm about to say, which is the importance of, no matter what advice we give here, the importance of having someone who can walk with you through the decisions that, I mean, it sounds like you've already made some decisions. And I would say, based on the information I have, because I know it's just coming from you, I can look at that and say, I can see the wisdom behind the decisions you made.
Me too.
I can see some of the healthy choices behind those, but there are going to be a lot of other decisions that go forward. And so having someone, if you're not a believer, having a counselor you can walk through, someone who you can trust to help kind of walk through the specifics of the scenario and how to help those. But I would say, if you are a believer, being in a Christian community, being able to open up, certainly, not that would exclude a counselor, but certainly to have someone who can help you see, hey, what is God's intention for you and your marriage and those things, to be able to walk through those, because it is just a different worldview. It is a different way. And the biblical morality, or Christian morality, is based on the worldview that Jesus in his life, death, and resurrection has restarted the world, and there is a new way to live because of that, including how you handle your marriage. There are certainly principles that apply to all relationships, but the way the Apostle Paul would say it is that marriage is this mysterious thing that reflects the way that Christ dies for his church, loves his church, and that becomes the model for how we as Christians handle our marriage and all the difficulties that come. But if you're not a believer, it's not the same for you. So it's just a different.
Well, and I would say there's possibility that you could get to the same result that you have gotten to, be Christian or non-Christian.
Absolutely.
But that the mindset and your internal focus and even the training you want to do with your son looks different based on Christian values or not. And I don't know if we want to talk about that at this point or not, but that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about it. I think you could wind up at the same place, possibly, but that the internal reasons I would have gotten there and what I was hoping for the other person and for my son and his view of marriage in the future might be different than for those who, that's not a consideration. The other thing I'd say to you, and Nathan made this point of, I think a community is important for you to have, whether you're Christian or non-Christian. And so, you are a prime candidate for Nar-Anon and Al-Anon.
That's good.
You should be seeking those kind of communities out, Christian or non-Christian, having a group of people. We're not going to speak to you specifically from that background, but if you go to either one of those communities, they are built for people who've been married to addicts. And you will find a lot of people who've been in the exact same scenario that you are in.
Yep.
Some who have chosen to make Jesus Lord of their life and follow him, and some that not. But they're relating to the circumstance will help you a good deal just by realizing, one, I'm not crazy. What's going on is not totally unique, because we tend to think my situation is totally unique. And what you find out is there's a lot of commonality in addiction and the damage it does in relationships and family systems and those kind of things. And you find a great deal of support as you try to walk through common kind of issues that would be very helpful to you, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. What's not helpful ever for either set is, if you're Christian, I'm going to talk to God about it. God and I are going to make a decision. I ain't going to tell anybody else. That's not helpful. And it's not helpful to think, if you're not a Christian, I'm going to make this decision and I'm not going to tell anybody else, because it's just so hard to talk about.
Yeah. One thing I heard in the question, and I've read your question several times now, and just want to call out one thing that leaped off of it to me just now as I was reading it, that I don't think people like us, pastors, Christians, often address in these kind of situations. But I think your desire and your willingness to focus on appropriate, healthy boundaries with the addict in your life is a sign of really good things in you.
Yeah.
Because what I have, and I've dealt with this in my counseling office, is sometimes out of the name of love, we often, when we're dealing with addicts, and this is true of believers a lot of times, because we want to love people, we don't find the strength to draw appropriate boundaries with people. And when we don't, it's not only unhealthy for me, it's unhealthy for the addict in my life as well. And so sometimes it's hard to get to that place where I can process enough and understand that saying no, or drawing a boundary, or saying this is as far as it can go, is the most loving thing that you can do. And in your case, it's loving for you, it's loving for your son, and it's loving for your wife to say, hey, I do want, because it sounds to me like you went to therapy, you tried to work this out. That was not working.
Right.
We were not seeing movement on her part towards health and healing and recovery. And there comes a point where you have to draw a line and say, if this is not going to change, then I have to make changes so that you understand that there has to be a separation between the addiction, again, not her, but the addiction, and me and our son. And what your hopes in doing that is, and this is what I talk to parents of addicts and spouses of addicts all the time, is that act, you hope, and again, you don't get to control it, it's only them, but you hope that by saying that they will understand that this is not an act against them personally. It's an act against this addiction. This is drawing fences around me and the addiction, and saying, now, if at any moment you're willing to walk away from the addiction and put in the work and do what you need to do to get into recovery, there's a way back into my life.
Right.
Even post-divorce, I would say.
That's right.
Now, there comes a point where, if you decide to move on, that's okay too. But understanding that, hey, this is about the addiction. This is not about you. And this is about being healthy, all of us. And sometimes being healthy means that I can't be around certain people and they can't be around me.
That's right.
So I just wanted to say that, because I want to commend you on that, because it sounded to me like the way you wrote the question that this wasn't a quick decision on your part.
Right, that's right.
You know what I mean? You just didn't go, well, if that's the way it's going to be, you're out of my life. You agonized over this. You love your wife. And so sometimes when we do these things, I know there's a struggle internally with, am I truly loving this person? And I would encourage you and say, I believe that's what you're trying to do.
Well, that's a part of, I would want to say, the goal may be different when you're Christian or non-Christian. And it may just, I'm a big one on telling yourself the truth, maybe because of struggles I've had in my life, that the reason I do this, there is, you said about showing respect for myself. That is true. But for a Christian point of view, it's really loving the other person.
That's right.
I am willing to do this really difficult thing. I'm going to sacrifice what would be easy, maybe not easier. I mean, when you're living with a person in addiction, it's often exceptionally painful. But I'm going to take the blows from people who say, "Oh man, why would you do that? You say you love her and you do that kind of thing."
Mhm.
It's an actual loving account, and I have to tell myself the truth. Either I did it out of love, or I did it, you know, out of
Mhm.
being
Something
upset or
else.
whatever,
Yeah.
what other every other reason. And there is a way to present that to your child and teach them about healthy boundaries,
Yes.
Mhm.
why you did it,
Mhm.
that we still love mom,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
we're still trying to help her,
Mhm.
but the words matter and the motivation matters.
Mhm.
That's why you can get to the same result, but maybe your motivation's not always the same.
Mhm.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. I think so many times, well, I don't know. I've seen it happen, so I don't want to make a general statement, but I do think a lot of Christians, this may be why you asked the question, a lot of us like to really lean into the, love is long suffering and it is patient and and marriage is for life unless there's infidelity. And we use those, which are standards that we do hold to. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there are situations where we can use those standards, those beliefs, principles that we have, and we wind up advising some people to stay way too long in situations that are harmful for them, harmful
Sure.
for everybody in that. So I hope that, you know, the the reason you asked this question was that you were trying to get some clarification on that. I don't know if somebody had made you feel
Right.
as if you had done something wrong or
Right.
guilty
Mhm.
for actually taking the step to move away from the marriage, and then you were dealing with that whole, am I now outside of God's will kind
Right.
of thing. And I would never make a definitive statement whether you are or not, because
No, that's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know your
But I do
situation.
know there's grace, and I do know that those kinds of cut and dried, black and white attitudes are
Mhm.
not often helpful in these kinds of situations. And so I hope you know that that's not what
Right.
we would ascribe to, not what we would want to give to you either. And if somebody has, I hope that uh, you find some separation from that guilt or that shame that you may be
Mhm.
feeling. If that's the case, I don't know, but
Well, and I would say even, words like long suffering that, you're right. I have known people that have used that as a whipping rod to beat people up
Mhm.
to
hmm
do things that probably aren't the right thing in the situation, but it
Mhm.
is long suffering
Hmm.
as well to hold a boundary and say,
Yeah.
Mhm.
um, I love you. I would want this to work, but until this happens, I can't.
Yeah.
It's long suffering to continue to say, "Hey, I'm for you. I want to help you, but I can't help you without this happening."
Mhm.
I mean, most parents know that. Most good parents know that, even with kids, that there are behaviors that happen even when they're young that you have to long suffer to help them get that behavior out of their life.
Mhm.
Um, and it's the same in every other situation as well. It doesn't mean I put up with. I
Yeah.
think that's the way we tend
Mhm.
to
That's right.
think of it. We tend to think of, I have to be a doormat. Long suffering
Right.
means I suffer by letting them step on me.
Mhm.
Now, there is also a suffering that comes from I'm doing this thing that is really hard to do. In our
Yeah.
culture,
Mm.
it is really hard to hold love and boundaries in tension.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Uh, Generally, boundaries only get in place with people we don't like
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that we don't want around. We put up boundaries then, and they're not really boundaries of this is mine and that's yours. This is a fence that you cannot
Yeah, I was
cross.
gonna say
That's what we tend to think of.
there's a
Yes.
difference with, you know, uh, a boundary and cutting someone out of your life.
Mhm.
There's boundaries by their nature mean there's going to be a level of I want to get to a place of healthy interaction.
Mhm.
I want to get to a place where you and I can meet at the property line of what's mine and what's yours.
Yeah.
Right now, and the way I think about it, once again, in my mind, I was thinking, even when you were talking, Jason, the thought that kept coming to my mind when you were using the word boundaries was, in the, I guess it's the King James version of the Lord's Prayer, instead of forgive us our sins, it says forgive us our trespasses. And I was actually thinking about that this morning as I heard someone say it that way. And I thought, that's really ultimately what sin is. It's me trespassing. When I'm sinning against another person, I am trespassing into your boundary. I'm going somewhere I should not go with you. I am stealing something from you I shouldn't. I'm trespassing against you. But the goal is I want to be able to have a boundary where me and this other person can get to a place where we can interact. We both know where the boundary is. We both know, and out of love for one another, we don't trespass against each other. We choose to say, I'm gonna be in my place. I think there are some of us, and honestly, I'll say this, I think sometimes in relationships, I don't want to use the word healthy, because I think if you don't have boundaries, it's not very healthy. I think in relationships that are easy and no one's constantly trespassing each other, we don't play boundaries with each other. So I'll say this, even with my wife, we have boundaries with each other because I have to make clear to myself, she's not responsible for my emotions.
That's right.
I come home with a bad day. It is trespassing for me to say, I'm going to throw that on you. Even though we're in the closest human relationship I have, there is a boundary. And she'll even say that sometimes is, I know you're in a bad mood, but that's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing. And she's putting up a boundary saying, you got to deal with that, not me.
Yep.
But what happens sometimes is in relationships are easy where there's not an abusive situation. There's not an addiction. We choose to act like sometimes, and you were talking about kids. We do this with kids so many times. Our kid is upset and we go, oh, I got to fix that.
Which is a boundary value.
That's me violating their boundaries. Or
and that continues a lot with adults of the instance you gave of a husband or a wife who this other spouse is upset. And I think it's my job.
Yes.
I feel like it's my job. And so I wander over into their property to try to fix a problem that isn't my problem.
Yes.
I mean, I can sympathize with them. I can feel sorry for them. I can listen to them.
Well, and I can ask them, is there something I can do?
Can I help support you?
Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to do something? Is there something? That is giving them the authority. But, and it goes vice versa. I mean, I've had to say to my kids all the time, why did this happen? Because I was mad. And I say every time, that's not an answer. Because you're mad is your problem. But you just chose to make it everyone else's problem. You just chose to say, I'm mad and you're not for some reason. How can I needle you and get you a little mad? And that's an important part of the boundary. And so when I say this about even in really toxic and unhealthy environments, the point, as Jason's already said, is I'm hoping to put this boundary up in place so that both of us can become healthy enough. Now, if the other person never chooses it and they keep trying to run through my boundary, I got to put a bigger boundary up.
Sure.
But that says is the fence isn't high enough.
That's right.
But I think what happens a lot, and this is where I get to when you talk about inner motivation, Ed talks about inner motivation in a Christian marriage. The way Paul would say it is, my ideal, God's ideal in the relationship is my thought is, I'm supposed to do for the other person what Christ does for the church. And so, and that's a lot of things that he certainly sacrifices for us. He sacrifices his life for us. He also cleanses us with the washing of his word. So that's, you take the truth and you don't just come in and go, because I love you, no matter what, you can do whatever you need to do. And I ain't got a problem. That God disciplines this church. God comes in and goes, this is going to be. So part of the thing in the relationship here is I have to be willing to say in no matter how difficult or ugly the relationship, the question I'm asking myself is, when you ask, is it loving, right? That's one part of it. And so we've already said the boundary is a loving thing. The next question is, what would Christ do for his church in this relationship? Once again, not to just say, now come over the boundary, do whatever you want to do. I think that motivation, when you're walking that out with a pastor or you're walking that out in Christian community, there's not an answer we can give you. So here's what Christ would do in your particular situation, because we're not walking with you. We don't know the particulars of the situation. To Jason's point, there's no way to say on the, hard, fast, black and white rules on marriage and those kind of things. That's not helpful to anyone in this situation. But it isn't helpful either to just say, hey, whatever you decide will be the most loving situation.
Taking care of yourself is also not an answer.
No, the ultimate,
not by itself.
Not by itself. That's right. It's not an answer.
The ultimate answer if you're a believer, once again, if you're a believer, this is what separates Christian morality from other things. The question is, based on the picture of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, what does that mean in this situation? As we've said, boundaries are all a part of that. Speaking the truth, dealing with all of that, and you trying to figure out, how do I, in the context of Christian community, in the context of that, walk that out with other people? They're going to be the ones to help you figure out the specifics of, hey, here's yes, when you say this suggestion, or you have this idea, or this is where you feel like the line is, they'll be able to say, yeah, I feel that too. The Holy Spirit speaking to me too. I agree with you. I think this is a whatever, good situation, bad situation, whatever the thing is.
For sure.
I think you should also accept that being in a relationship with a person who is ill, which I will put them in that category, involves a great deal of pain on the part of the person who loves them.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever decision is made, if there's truly love, the pain will not go away. So removal of pain, once you have decided to enter into a covenantal relationship, or if you take it from, if this were a child you were telling me about, which we've all dealt with parents that have addicted children,
Mm-hmm.
there is no decision you make that will make your life painless.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've had a relationship with
Mhm.
somebody that you're going to be in a relationship with forever, and you all have a child together,
Yeah,
that's going to be true for you
Absolutely.
from now on. So a lot of times our friends and our Christian friends want to do loving things for us by giving us suggestions that they hope will make us feel better. There is some degree of, we have to admit, this is going to not feel better for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it'll never feel completely right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's wrong.
Doesn't mean
That's
what
right.
you did was wrong.
That's
That's
right.
exactly right.
That's right. Love has suffering baked into it.
It
Mhm.
does.
You know, I said this to my kids. I say it to the parents that I work with. I say, you know, part of what it means to love is at least opening myself up to
Yes.
the need to suffer alongside of this, or with this person, or in spite of this person, whatever. But
And that may have to be from a distance.
sure.
That may have to be not
Well,
as
the
close
distance
as,
is a suffering, I think.
Yeah, oh yeah, certainly.
I mean, when
you-
you love, if you love your wife, which I know you do,
Mm-hmm.
being in the relationship you're in right now is a suffering, because
Yes.
you can't be with her. I get that.
And
Yeah.
you can't relate the way you once
No.
did,
That's
or
right.
you hoped to.
And if you didn't love her, you wouldn't suffer.
That's right.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. And I think a lot of times in these situations, our culture has done this a lot. We think that somehow separating, and I'm not saying, again, everything you said, I probably would have counseled. Boundaries are okay, removing yourself, all of that. I don't want to say that. But separation and divorce don't stop pain.
No.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, they increase pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different kind of pain.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's baked into the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And our culture, all these, is very much about, how can I live a painless life? I'm at the conclusion at my age now, I don't know that it's possible.
I don't
It is
think with
possi- it
love
is-
it's possible.
It is possible to be a cold, hard person that doesn't feel other people's pain. But for me to be that kind of person would be painful in and of itself.
Mm, yeah, different.
Yep.
Just a different kind of pain.
And it
sure.
sounds like you deeply care about your wife.
Right.
You deeply care about your kid. And I
Mhm.
think that, as we've already said, is certainly commendable. And whether you're a believer or not, I would say that is evidence of the love of Christ at work in your life. So if you're not a
Yes.
believer, maybe give it a good thought, because I do think the love that you at least are expressing to us in this question sounds a lot like
Yeah.
Jesus to me.
And to the person who asked this question, if you need some people
Mm-hmm.
to walk you through some of those specifics and those nuances, and you would hear what we just had to say, and you would say, well, I don't have that in my life, we would be more than happy to help. If you continue to reach out to us, you can do that in the comments or just reach out to us. You can find us. We're easy to find. We would be more than happy to speak specifically with you, walk you as much as we can. We don't know where you are, who you are, but we would do whatever we could to help you with that. So, all right, that's enough. We've done enough.
I think so.
I think so. So we will call that for today, and be with you next time with another question. Y'all have a good week. See ya.